Thank you guys for coming today on our event on the truth behind eco-labels and how to spot and avoid greenwashing. If we haven't connected before, my name is Kelly and I'm the founder of Impact Travel Alliance. I am going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can dive right in. We're talking about a lot of complex topics today, so I want to make sure that we have ample time to cover everything. So if you haven't been to an ITA event before, or if you're not familiar with our organization, we are the world's largest community for socially conscious and environmentally conscious travelers. ITA is an independent 501c3 nonprofit, and our vision is to improve the world through travel. We do that by educating travelers how to explore in a way that has a positive impact on local communities and protects our environment. Everything that we do is rooted around content and storytelling. So we have events like this. We also have in-person events when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. And we have a lot of online resources as well through our blog and our, we have a Facebook group as well that's a community and resource for our community. So I just wanted to run through a couple of quick definitions so that everyone is aligned and on the same page. And then I'm going to go ahead and let our panelists introduce themselves. So to kick things off, if you're new to sustainable tourism, I want to make sure that everyone has a baseline understanding of what it is. When we're saying sustainable tourism, we're talking about travel that has a positive impact on a local community, and that's its environment and the cultural components of it, and then also having a positive impact on the environment. So when we're talking about sustainable tourism, I think oftentimes the knee-jerk reaction is to think of ecotourism and an eco lodge in Costa Rica. But I want to broaden that definition a little bit and start to think of it in terms of travel that can be applied to any trip, no matter where you're going, what your budget is, or who you're booking with. And so, yes, it could be an eco lodge in Costa Rica, but it could also be a hotel in New York City. Greenwashing is the next topic that I want to quickly define. Essentially, greenwashing happens when a brand markets itself as sustainable or eco-friendly, but doesn't have the practices to back it up. So for example, if you go to a hotel and they have a sign in the bathroom that says, "We're not washing your towels because we want to save water and preserve our resources." Yes, they might be doing that as an environmentally friendly practice, but on the flip side, they're also saving money. And so just thinking about what is the overarching narrative there, and are they actually committed to environmental sustainability and not just marketing it in a way that makes them look good. On the flip side of greenwashing is green hushing, and green hushing happens when a brand does have eco-friendly practices, but they're not talking about them. That's usually happening because a brand is fearful of negative backlash, because they think that they might not be doing enough, or they think that they're going to have some sort of backlash on whether that's a social media campaign or anything in that realm, where they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to put it in the spotlight and open it up to criticism. There's also a lot of brands who just think that consumers should just inherently know about their sustainability initiatives, and so they don't spend time talking about them. Both greenwashing and green hushing are problematic for different reasons, and we'll dive into those deeper, but the main thing that I want you to take away from that is that it really just overcomplicates an already complex system. The last term that I want to define is stakeholders. When we're talking today, we're going to be talking a lot about small businesses as well as corporations, and especially when we're thinking about corporations and how big they are, you have all of these different levels of stakeholders who are involved in the decision making of what goes into the marketing, the sustainability, all of these different initiatives. And sometimes they care a lot about sustainability and sometimes they don't. And so when we're talking about sustainability and buy-in, if you don't have buy-in from every player and every stakeholder within the business, that makes it more complex to be able to push sustainability initiatives to the forefront. So without further ado, I am going to open it up to our panelists. Randy, do you want to go ahead and kick it off with a quick introduction, followed by David and Natalie?
Yes, my screen kept changing, so to unmute. Yes, I'm Randy Durband. I'm the CEO of GSTC, the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. GSTC is a UN created in support from the conservation community like WWF and many others. We were created in 2007 to create global for business, or for industry, for government, I should say, and destination management. Nobody can touch our standards in terms of the inclusiveness. We literally reach out to all 6 populated continents, thousands. We have an 11,000 email list of trade associations and universities and governments and businesses. And we distill this incredible apolitical cross-cultural input from all segments of stakeholders to manage the GSTC criteria. So really sort of the go-to long definition of sustainable tourism. Nice to be with you.
Thank you, Randy. My name is David Levanthal, and I reside in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I'm on representing the hoteliers because I own a small eco-luxury, sustainable, regenerative boutique hotel in Mexico. It's on the Pacific coast near Zihuatanejo, about 35 minutes from the airport, on 200 acres of land and a mile of beachfront, about a pristine beach. And we do a lot of, and I'm also co-founder of a group called Regenerative Resorts, which is a collection of similar hotels that are really trying to operate at the highest levels of social environmental impact while still operating at a high level of luxury as well. I like to say it's kind of like the Whole Foods of hospitality in that way, of small independent operators. So I will leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Natalie Kidd. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Intrepid Travel. And Intrepid has been taking travellers on small group adventures around the world to all continents. And we've been operating for 31 years now. We're very much focused not just on obviously delivering a fantastic trip and customer experience, but also really doing good things in the destinations that we go to. We have always focused on sustainability kind of issues. It's been very much at the heart of the business ever since we started, but we've been carbon neutral since 2010. In 2018, we became B Corp certified, and we're actually the world's largest travel B Corporation. And as a business, we say we not only want to be the best travel company in the world, we actually want to be the best travel company for the world. And that's really the impact statement that kind of keeps all our team focused. So I've been with the business for 15 years now. I started off setting up our Vietnam operations office. We've got our own operations offices in 25 different destinations around the world. And that allows us to get a bit deeper into the communities where we operate as well. So it's a great topic, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm really excited to have each of you. You each come from a really diverse background. Like I said, this is a complex topic, and my goal with this panel is that we're able to shine some light on the nuances within it. We're talking about the travel and tourism industry, which represents 10% of the world's GDP. So that's huge. It's a very big and complex space that oftentimes I'll be asked this question on a panel, and it's just one person answering one question in a limited amount of time. And so I'm excited to have this hour to dive in a little bit deeper and get a diverse set of perspectives from each of you. For all of the attendees who are here, the goal is to have a really lively and engaging conversation. I'm going to run through a bunch of questions that I have for the panelists. We'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. And to kick it off, my first question is, I know that I defined greenwashing and greenwashing and talked about how it's confusing for travelers. Just to start things off, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but do any of you have any additional context to add to why those two phenomenons are problematic?
If I could just kick it off, I'm asked all the time about greenwashing, and I think the most common form of greenwashing is really sort of what people don't talk about when they talk about the good things they do. So if they do one or two good things, then they might talk about it as a business. But if they're neglecting everything else, and if they don't operationalize what they talk about, you mentioned, Kelly, the towel policy. That's tremendously neglected. Many hotels in the world claim to have a towel policy, but they don't actually honor it. So there's two pieces to this, is that, you know, sustainability should be looked at holistically. So you shouldn't brag too much about your towels if that's the only thing you do, or if you even do it anyway. And now everybody's looking at plastics, but if you're not looking at clean energy in general and all sorts of other issues, to me, that's greenwashing. It's sort of, you know, making some claim about doing one or two things well, but not talking about all the things you're doing poorly.
And then, David, do you want to jump in at all?
I was going to give Natalie an opportunity, so we don't have all that.
I'd agree with what Randy says. I think one of the complexities of sustainability is there are so many elements you need to be looking at, and things change over time. But transparency, I think, is a really big part of it. You know, talking to not only the things that you've done well, but the things that you've tried that maybe haven't worked. Being, I think, honest and transparent about everything you're doing is really important. But there are just so many elements of sustainability, which I'm sure we'll get into, and that's part of the complexity. So I think some people go out with greenwashing intentionally. Others probably do it unintentionally, but through lack of focus probably, but focusing on the transparency of what we're doing, I think is really key.
And Natalie, I want to echo exactly what you said. I think transparency and honesty is exactly where it needs to be. And you're right. I think we have to give the traveler the benefit of the doubt that they can kind of see through it and take the effort to find where their comfort level is with this. Because, you know, we look at, there's green, sustainable, regenerative, and, you know, you can move up that path. And much of it is, I think the other part of it is engaging with your traveler to make sure that they're part of that feedback loop. They're the ones that can tell you how you can improve if you're open to it. So it is transparency, it is honesty, and I think it's engagement as well.
And even in thinking about transparency, one of the things that always comes up a lot when people find ITA's community and they're learning about all of these really great sustainable tourism initiatives around the world is the topic of certification. And Randy, I know that you can speak to the vast amount of certification programs that are out there. David, I'd also love to hear your opinion on why you're not certified, because I think there's two sides to this story. And both looking at each of these projects, I know of so many examples around the world, and some are GSPC certified, some are B Corp, which is also connected to GSPC, and some are not certified, but they're doing really great things. And so as a traveler, it's like, whoa, like that's very confusing to look at that and try to make sense of that. And then at the same time, then you throw in greenwashing and you're like, actually not all of those certification programs are legit. So with all of that in mind, David, first, can you give me some context as to why you've chosen not to become certified? And then Randy, can you also jump in and tell me a little bit more about the importance of certification programs?
Sure. So, you know, when we started the process of developing Playa Viva, this was back in about 2006, my wife went off to Greenbuild and met with several folks in that community. And what resonated with her was a guy named Bill Reed, who had been part of founding Greenbuild, but really one of the things he points out is that even if you're a LEED certified platinum building, you're still not a carbon neutral. And that type of certification really didn't meet with our personal values. The other part of it was, you know, I would travel to places and find a little certification card at the hotel, and I would come out of Playa Viva where, you know, we don't use air conditioning, we use Bernoulli effect and get natural airflow, and try to be more immersed in nature. And when I walked into that hotel as part of a poverty conference, the air conditioner's blasting, there's condensation on the window, and right next to the, you know, control for the air conditioning is that we're certified. And it kind of was like, I can't certify myself with that certification if that's what this means. And so, you know, the other thing that we felt was in looking at even getting LEED certified was there was almost a least common denominator effect to it. And there was also a gaming effect to it. Like, if we could put a bike rack on, then we'd get a point. And if we could do this, and if we did things that somebody put arbitrarily that didn't apply to our ecosystem into some framework, that we could game that system to get a better rating, which had nothing to do with what we thought the real value came in engaging with the poverty in the community and the health of the community and the economic development of the community and some of the things that meant more. And so we felt it was more important not to work for the certification, but work to do the work that we felt was important based on our values. And as Natalie said earlier, just be transparent about that. Publish that out to our guests. Engage our guests in that process. You know, one of the things that I do want to mention is, as part of an investment that we got from Conservation International and Verde Ventures, they required us to go through a certification called GEARS, which is the Global Impact Investing Rating System done by B Corp. So when we went through that, and that was probably in 2009, no, closer to 2010, that's when I really did see some of the benefits of certification systems in having you look at systems that you might not normally look at and bring those to bear. But we don't have any certifications as of now. As we're developing regenerative resorts, we've started out with, you know, soft measures at looking at first the values of the founders. And when we see that the founders are aligned in having the right values, that we feel the rest of the organization and operations will follow, we've brought them on, but we're getting more and more pressure from the traveler saying, give us some hard numbers. Why is that hotel in there other than just the value? And so we're now beginning to look at not creating our own certification, but having some system around that, which I can discuss more later. I hope that answered the question, Kelly, and feel free to double click on any point.
Absolutely. And also, I just want to clarify, I'm asking you these questions just to play a little bit of a devil's advocate and even think about why there are brands out there. Because when you learn about certification, it seems like, oh, it's a no-brainer. You would, of course, get a certification. And I want to add a little bit more color to this and think about the different perspectives for why someone would or wouldn't.
Well, you know, as I said, part of the initial feeling was, if that's a certification, we don't want to be any part of that. So that was the devil's advocate position on that, without a doubt. That we could do better. And that one of the things that, as we talked about with some of our initial marketing people, is the conscious consumer traveler is what Denise called the label reader, and the person who turns the bottle around to see all the ingredients. And so we felt that if we just published all the things that we're doing out there, that was our certification. It was kind of like our buyer didn't need to see the front and see the certification on the front. What they needed to do, they were the kind that walked into the farmer's market and had the conversation with the farmer, and through that conversation felt good or bad about buying those products. I don't know why I'm using a lot of food analogies, but.
Kelly, shall I go ahead?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, it's an enormous topic. So GSTC, once we created standards, we try to put them into application for certification. So we don't certify, but about 5 years ago, we launched an accreditation program where certification bodies can voluntarily come to us, and then we intensely review their process of certification. Because when GSTC was created in 2007, there are already something like about 150 eco-labels on hotels as sustainable in the world. Today in our database, we have nearly 300. And in 5 years, we've accredited 6, but several in the pipeline. So what we found then and what we find today is this incredible range of what calls itself certification. It ranges from exceptional certification to, frankly, terrible things that call themselves certification. Now, what do I mean by terrible? If the entire process of certification is not transparent, if it's not impartial, there are play-for-pay programs where you just pay the money. They exist, and they call themselves certification programs. So we think the value of certification is to put an enterprise through the discipline of going through the holistic scheme, go item by item to work on all the different elements. There's tremendous value in that. We've never seen anybody get certified that didn't say at the end, that was worthwhile. You know, we were already doing well in a few things, but now we do better on everything because we went through that process. So we're working on a scheme, which we'll talk about, I think, later in this discussion about the market access value of it. There are huge values of eventually getting it right. But to this point of why and why not, you know, even though there's so many certification bodies, the exposure to it is very uneven in the world. I can think of a highly sustainable luxury camp in Africa that doesn't want to get certified because the certification available in their country is a weak program, and they don't want to be associated with the certified entities because they know they're more sustainable than the other entities. So there are compelling reasons not to, which makes for the compelling case for what we're trying to build. We've modeled ourselves after other industries that were started many years ahead of us that all took many years to develop. FSC for eco-labels on wood and paper and others in other sectors. It takes a huge amount of time. And then we have a catch-22 of kind of building up the market access, but we're working now with major famous online travel agents that are testing hotel search results, marking certified sustainable. So, but again, maybe we can get back into market access a little bit later. But I have to emphasize just the huge range of quality of what calls itself certification. So our accreditation is based on a manual. It was years in development where we take the most relevant pieces of ISO standards, which properly define certification, and provide an assurance that the certification body is competent, impartial. They separate consulting from the certification decision. There's a whole myriad of issues. Society doesn't understand standards and certification. So society, we as travelers, we just sort of, oh, that's certified. What does that mean? Well, let me tell you, the core message I want to deliver is not all certifications are the same. And we're trying to filter that, and we can talk more about it. But why did I stop there for now?
And I love the work that you guys are doing. It's so thorough, and whether it's a small certification program or something that's on a mass scale, everything that the GSPC does is done on such an in-depth and thorough basis. It's brought together a lot of resources from various thought leaders across the industry and really incorporated all of that into what that criteria looks like. On the flip side of that, again, to play a little bit of the devil's advocate here, knowing that the GSPC is essentially going through and cleaning up accreditation bodies and talking about certification programs that are actually legit, from the traveler's perspective, that still can be very confusing to look at things. Like David's saying, looking at the back of a food label and saying, oh, it is certified. And then you realize that not all certification programs are treated equally. So is the certification program that you're looking at actually legit? And that's, Natalie, my next question for you. I'd love to talk about B Corp, because that to me is exciting that you guys are registered as a B Corp, because it is so widely recognized. So I'd like to talk about that connection, and also just, if you are a B Corp, does that mean that you're sustainable? Does it mean that you're certified? Does it mean that you're connected with the GSPC? Can you help to translate some of that for the travelers in our community?
Sure. B Corp's oops, I've just turned my light off. B Corp is a very broad program, and it's really what it's certifying is that you're looking at numerous stakeholders, that you're balancing the purpose of your business with the profit of your business. You can still be a for-profit business, but still be doing good things. And B Corp really helps you evaluate that. But like all good certification programs, what it gives you is that framework and an ability to continue to assess, to continue to learn, to continue to improve year on year, because you do need to recertify. So the process of becoming a B Corp for us was at least an 18-month process of going through, learning about it, improving things. For us as a travel business, we have offices in over 30 different locations around the world, and it was making sure that we were being consistent, we were picking up what was working well in each place, sharing those learnings, making sure that we were adapting and learning from the process. So I don't think any certification is a once-off stamp that you are fully sustainable. It's an ongoing process, and situations change. What you need to focus on changes. But B Corp really talks about governance. That's where this part around transparency comes in. It talks about the planet. It talks about your people and your customers as well. So it's broad. It's talking about those multiple stakeholders that you introduced at the start. And it's really saying that as a business, you are committed and held accountable, legally accountable, for meeting the needs of all of those stakeholders. So B Corp's something that we committed to. We're now starting to prepare for recertification that's going to happen in the next year or so. And so again, it's you can't rest on your laurels. You can't say, yeah, okay, we've got it once, we're now sustainable, we don't need to worry about it. Every time we go through that recertification, it's going to get tougher. We need to improve. We've got more businesses, and we want each of our businesses or our offices to step up and improve as we go through that process. So it's really a framework for learning, a framework for improvement. But because it is gaining recognition and more widely understood, we felt it was valuable from that perspective to really, as much for us as for our customers, to say that, yes, the work that we're doing is being assessed by somebody independent from us. It's not just us going out saying we're doing great things. We're working within that framework. GSTC, we've been a member in GSTC just for the last 2 years, and I've attended one GSTC conference so far. But again, I really appreciate what GSTC does in terms of that accreditation and helping us, even though we went through B Corp, which is separate to some of the GSTC accredited certifications. I think having somebody accredit certifications and says, these are the ones that are really good, that's really useful. We, since 2015 in our South American offices, have been certified by Rainforest Alliance. They've recently changed their name, but they're, of course, have been accredited by GSTC, and it just helps you choose what certifications are useful to go through. So we really value that kind of association, and we're getting, I think, closer and working more in with GSTC as well. So different purposes there, but I think behind all of them, it's about the learning, as Randy was saying, it's about the framework, but it's about the continual improvement.
Randy, do you want to follow up on that at all?
Yeah, if I could just quickly touch upon B Corp and LEED certified. So thank you, Natalie, for those comments. You know, we're trying to harmonize various schemes in the world and not compete with them. So this is, I really want your audience to be clear on that point. So B Corp is designed for all sorts of businesses and all sorts of sectors. We at GSPC are focused on tourism. So in fact, Natalie is part of a small little core team we're putting together to try to avoid overlap of those B Corp elements that relate to tourism and what we're doing. So they complement each other, and you can score points towards both by doing it the right way. So we're trying to, you know, streamline those. So those are absolutely complementary. So I just don't want to get anybody the impression that, you know, they kind of compete with each other, because we're trying to avoid that. And then I wanted to quickly comment too on LEED certified. Everything that we're talking about with B Corp and GSTC are both operations based, and as Natalie has pointed out, a core concept of continuous improvement, because you have to recertify, you have to show improvement, you have to maintain what you're doing well, and you have to get better at what you're not doing so well. So that's really built into these ongoing. LEED certified is about what a physical plant, the building, when it's built or renovated, right? It's not about the operations. You could put into your building the key card that operates the aircon only when the key's in. Well, if the housekeeping department leaves the key in 24 hours a day and sets the room temperature at 18 degrees Celsius, that's horrible. So you could be LEED certified because you put those things in the physical building, but what we're talking about at B Corp and GSTC is operations. I just really wanted to make that distinction. LEED is all about the actual building and construction and the design.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I think that's such an important distinction. What I'm hearing from all three of you in terms of what's significant, not only in the progress itself, but it's also looking at this criteria and metrics and committing to long-term improvement, but then also being able to measure that through data and metrics and insight. And I wanted to take a moment to touch upon the fact that sustainability, again, it's not just about your impact on the environment, it's also about your impact on local communities and people who are in our world around us. And sustainability is, in and of itself, it's rooted in diversity and inclusion. So thinking a lot about what's happening in light of recent events right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, I also wanted to touch upon that. There's a new group that's come up called the Black Travel Alliance. Everyone should give them a follow on Instagram right now, so you can follow along with what they're up to. It's just at the Black Travel Alliance. And what they're doing is in part inspired by Pull Up for Change, an organization that's calling for more transparent data surrounding representation of Black voices, particularly in leadership roles. And the Black Travel Alliance is focused on going beyond social media posts and posting a little black box and saying, we stand with you, which in and of itself, if you're not backing that up with action, that is a greenwashed thing that you're putting out there into the world. And so what they're really pushing for is saying, let's go beyond social media posts and really work for meaningful change within the industry. All of that in mind, it's new, it's happening quickly, it's a grassroots movement. And so I'd love to hear from each of you just around your thoughts around grassroots movements such as these, and how are they significant in terms of branding and transparency. And that's anyone who wants to grab that is welcome.
Okay, I'll jump in. I think the thing about grassroots movements is, you know, they come from the people, they come from perceived needs, and you know, often that's where you really can get in and make the most change. But Absolutely. It's all about actions, and I guess this is where the greenwashing, greenwashing can apply to so many different things. It's not about what you come out and say you're doing. It's about having the proper actions that are operational, that are really embedded. But we tend to work, I guess, from a sustainability perspective. We work with big corporations, big certifications, big bodies, but also with grassroots projects, grassroots movements. And I think working at both of those levels really helps us make a difference. Again, it's that span of things you do, not just one focus. Of course, there's a lot of focus at the moment on diversity and inclusion, and we're a diverse business, but like everything, you can always get better. So, of course, we're going through the process now of reevaluating what are we doing, what have we done, what can we improve on? And as a result of some of these movements, starting to pull together action plans. That's on my list for continuing work on today, looking at what those action plans are, what we can embed further. Comes back to what we were talking about before, continuous improvement, and also transparency, being open and admitting to things that perhaps we haven't got right, things that we haven't done as well as we could have in the past, but committing to improve on that.
I guess I'll go next. Thank you, Natalie. Well, I think when you look at grassroots movements, I mean, we're in the midst of a grassroots movement right now, which is almost unprecedented. Who can think of a similar one that's had so much power, so much passion across so many societies, and has the staying power that doesn't fizzle out after a few days? So this is really, we're in the midst of really one of the greatest ever. And because it's such a deep issue, and so racial inequality is so prevalent in so many societies, that it's fabulous. And because it's proven its enormity, I mean, what could be more democratic and more inclusive than this grassroots movement happening right now? So absolutely, we all have to listen to it. And it's so exciting that we're getting some real substantive change. Now, there can be other grassroots movements that are grassroots, but how prevalent are they? If I want to take this to sustainable tourism, when there are citizens protest movements in Barcelona and elsewhere in the world about, tourists go home and too many tourists, well, then we need to listen to that. But what action do we take from that? We really have to look at things in a holistic way, because many people in Barcelona benefit from tourism. Even some of those people protesting benefit in indirect ways that they may not even be aware of. So what we have to take from grassroots is, what is the concern? What is the passion? And let's address those issues and make them better. But you don't just automatically react instantly to any element of any grassroots movement. Everything still requires a more inclusive and process to really get the feelings of the totality of a population. But what society has done very poorly in any political system is to get an equitable, fair way of assessing the true desires of community. It's usually elites in any political system, any social system. It's usually the elites that have the best voice and have their way. So we all need to get better, I think, in all communities and all societies, that getting more diverse inclusion of voices to manage tourism and all aspects of our lives better. So this is an exciting moment right now, but we'll hope that we can get more passion and inclusion on issues of society, talking about other elements of sustainability in the future.
And Randy, I know that the GSPC criteria does have specific criteria within it that is focused on social and economic benefits specifically for underrepresented communities. Can you just shed a little bit of light on that and what that criteria looks like?
Absolutely. Within both sets of our, I'm unmuted. Within both sets of our criteria for destinations and industry, there are various elements that relate to these issues. I just typed the acronym that I like very much to all the attendees: DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And we can find elements of these three throughout the criteria on decent work that says you need to train and employ minorities, Hiring practices hiring and recruiting should be inclusive of all races and ethnic groups, including management positions, and various other things in terms of preventing exploitation and discrimination, harassment, and so forth. So yeah, it's this acronym, diversity, equity, inclusion, are baked into the GSTC criteria. I really, honestly, am passionate about the fact that because of the incredibly inclusive process of creating the GSTC criteria, we've distilled, as I said earlier, thousands of inputs of what it means to be sustainable. They're really quite comprehensive. 41 criteria with some 160 performance indicators. So, like most of the issues that most of us would think about are core issues of sustainability. They're in the criteria.
David, did you want to expand on anything?
Well, I think both Natalie and Randy made some great points. From my perspective on this, it definitely is an issue of systemic inequality. And I think social impact is part of the movement to create more equity. And I think that's part of our values as hoteliers and something we're looking for in the values of the people that are these independent folks who found a beautiful place, who found a community that they love, and they want to empower that community. And tourism is a great way to bring in resources to help create more equity in the world. And, you know, that's part of what we do on every day. I mean, I could tell you stories from our general manager who left as a little girl at 14 to be a bus girl at Club Med and came back after H1N1 and became the general manager of Playa Viva, and how that's created and empowered her as a woman in a macho society in Mexico, as a leader of kind of the largest employer in town. To our permaculture people talk about how the farmers that they're training in permaculture principles are now taking them back with excitement to their community and the knowledge. So yes, kind of equity happens in so many different ways, and it is a grassroots movement. And this grassroots movement was definitely flamed by so many things, from social media and being able to see what's happening and the transparency and the mass distribution of it, to, you know, the fact that we're in a pandemic, as well as the fact of lack of leadership, or leadership that is pushing things in a different direction. So yes, it is up to us to be that leadership, to push that equity in wherever we are and whatever we do.
And what I do love about the Black Travel Alliance is that, in contrast to a certification program, where in the certification program you go through this process of hitting these metrics and hitting these benchmarks, and then you become certified. And what is cool about the Black Travel Alliance and Pull Up for Change is it's just saying, we know that something's wrong. There's these deep issues that are blatantly obvious. Let's please just acknowledge them so that we can move forward from there. And that shift away from saying there's all of these steps that you have to do before you become certified, to just saying, take the first step in admitting that we need to improve, is so important, and it really, really needs to be heard. I'm going to open it up for Q&A in about 5 or so minutes. I do want to take Andre's question before I move on from this topic, and not to put anyone on the spot. And again, this is a place for candid conversations, but also to admit that sustainability is a journey and we are improving. Andre has asked if you have plans to add more Black and Indigenous voices to your respective boards.
I'll say this, we've had Black people on the GSTC board in the past. Most of our board seats are elected positions, so we need more candidates. And I would say that our membership has done extremely well. We have the only board in a recent study and anywhere in tourism that had gender equality on the board over the course of many years. And we actually, in the voting process, just remind people, please, let's get geographic equity, let's get gender equity, let's get ethnic equity. And our members are very inclined to do that. Frankly, we really would welcome more candidates. So that's our organization.
How do you become a candidate, as a follow-up question then? Can you share how you become a candidate in the first place?
Well, we put out a call to membership for self-nominations, but anybody from the outside is welcome. But we do prefer that somebody's been a member engage with us first before they're our board members, so that they can provide meaningful input as board members.
Thank you.
I guess from the Intrepid perspective, we're a private company, and we've made, in terms of our board, we've expanded the board just within the last probably 18 months to ensure we got some gender equity. I guess was the first step in terms of getting some female members onto our board. We're certainly looking at that diversity and inclusion across our business at a senior executive and management level. I mean, one of the things in our business that I've been most passionate about is being located in so many different destinations. It's how we've been able to include staff, develop staff, to have people coming through the ranks, and to have senior people contributing to the organisation at the highest levels from diverse cultural backgrounds. And so that's something that we've done, but we're also looking at what more can we do to make sure that diversity of voices at the highest level. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that the general manager of our hotel is from that community, and our entire management team is women. Just they're the most capable ones for those particular roles. And it works out that we have that. We've got a great gender representation. So, I think another thing that we're proud of is helping our local folks, our local stakeholders be empowered. So one of the great stories is our local guy who's in charge of activities, he's spun off his own business now. So our role in helping local folks become entrepreneurs and support them in their activities and what they're doing. I think those, at our grassroots level, that's the most important thing we can do. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. And again, I think what's really important about all of this is just saying the industry really needs to improve. It needs to wake up. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And the first step there is acknowledging that it is, especially in leadership roles, vastly made up of white, usually men. And so these conversations are so important. And I know from speaking on behalf of Impact Travel Alliance and our community, what I love about this community is that we have the strength of 20,000 plus travelers around the world who are demanding change. And we're able to take that back to the industry and really push for it and advocate for it and say, these are issues that travelers are passionate about. And these are issues that are important to our world and that we need to do better as an industry. So from the traveler's perspective, the more questions that you're asking, the more that you're demanding change, brands listen to that. And then also on behalf of ITA, we're advocating for you and with you and really trying to push the industry toward a more sustainable and just future. I do want to open it up for Q&A soon. I'm going to close it off with just one last question. I want to make sure that our travelers today can walk away with some tangible tips for booking sustainable options. We've talked a lot about the complexities behind certification programs, what exists, greenwashing, green hushing, and how all of that is a complex space. So I want to talk about what sustainability tips and traits should someone be looking for when they're booking, no matter what their travel style is, whatever their budget is, or wherever they're going. anyone who wants to jump in.
I'll jump in on that one. I think you know, consumers need to do a bit of research into who they're booking with, but what to look for, I think it's summed up by respect. If you're booking with an organisation, do they respect the planet? You know, we need to be looking after the planet for the future. Do they respect the places they go to, the communities they work with, and how do they make a positive impact? So it can be done in different ways for different styles of travel, different organisations, but I think it comes down to respect. You know, we look at the importance of climate change on the planet. If we're not doing things about climate change, we're not going to have communities to travel to. And climate change is impacting different communities at different rates. So that's an important area. But what kind of activities are included? You know, in the past, there are certain activities that travel companies would have offered that we now know are not the right types of things to do. You know, visiting schools or orphanages or these types of things. Do they still offer activities that are now known to be not responsible practices? Do they have responsible practices in terms of wildlife and interactions with wildlife and wildlife viewing? Do they make positive impact through partnering with projects and communities and assisting in meaningful ways? So I think there's a whole range of things, but it comes down to how that business shows respect for the planet and the people that we interact with as travellers. There's some of my tips.
I'll go next. Playa Viva uses the motto, and actually we've extended on to Regenerative Resorts, which is where your vacation meets your values. And to complement when Natalie says, yeah, it's understand your values and where you want to go. One of the hotels in our collection, Hamanasi, they don't do any bookings online. And the reason they don't do that is they want to talk to every single traveler who's coming, because the last thing they want is a mismatch. They don't want somebody to come there who is expecting something that they're not and missing on delivering on that experience. And so, you know, you definitely need to understand what it is that you're looking for, a place that's going to make you happy. Go right to their website, do the research. I personally go right to their about page and read who they say they are and what they're all about. Then obviously we look at the reviews and see that they live up to what people say they're all about. And then, you know, book it, go, experience it. And, you know, I can't tell you what your values are and how you should travel, but I can definitely try to make what we're doing and ask that folks who we're involved with to do that, to make sure that you're getting an experience that's going to meet you. It's going to meet you where you're at. But I would also say this, that we get a lot of groups that come and stay at Playa Viva, and inevitably there's somebody who's like, uh-oh, I didn't realize there was no air conditioning. I didn't realize that there were like bugs and mosquito nets, and they're freaked out at first. But those folks end up the ones who say afterwards, wow, after I've had this experience and it was a little bit outside my comfort zone, I want to travel like this all the time. Now, it's good that they were there with a group so that they were supported through that process. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add to this by saying that, you know, seeking sustainable tourism product is frankly not easy. We wish it was easier. We at GSPC are working hard to make it easier. I alluded to that earlier, where we're working with some online travel agents to market product and so forth. So we're moving in that direction. But but the consumer can seek, you know, as David and Natalie have said, you can ask questions. I would encourage you as travelers to indeed seek, read the website carefully. Often there's too much greenwashing. You may have to go a little bit too deep into the website to find it. But also, you know, request. I mean, that's been mentioned as well. Ask questions up front. I mean, David's experience is a little extreme of no online booking, but all talking. But on online, we're going to have chat menus. We're going to have emails asking the questions before you purchase. Request, request, request. One of our challenges we see is, as we talk to businesses around the world, is they say, well, people don't really ask for sustainability very much. So please, people on this call, request, 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 ask, ask, ask. Be vocal. Let the suppliers, let the businesses know that you care at time of booking. Then when you get on the experience, you know, hold them to it. Check up on things. Comment on comment cards. Even when you check in a hotel, many hotels are doing things that don't even really publicize so well. They may, increasingly, there's some rewards. You know, if you're multi-night stay in a hotel, they might give you points in exchange for not having housekeeping on days 2 and 3. There's a lot of programs out there that, you know, just aren't getting really well promoted. So talk a lot, ask a lot, and then when you're finished with the travel experience, please, please comment upon it. Ask for improvement on specific things that you're passionate about. Ask for certification. Most, you know, if you're on this call, you're probably a very green person, very concerned about social justice. Well, please be vocal. Your silence does not help the situation. So we're all working in our space about making pre-booking information more available to you. It's not easy. We're working hard at it, but you've got a role as a traveler to speak up and, you know, improve it for the future. And, you know, utilize programs. Lufthansa Airlines, a German carrier, recently did a study where 78% of their travelers said that they would be interested in doing carbon offsets to support rainforest protection. 1% pickup. 78% said they're interested in doing it, and 1% do it. I mean, come on, that's horrible. So we as super greens in this call, we should be model citizens. We should at least be doing all those things. Always add the green option to a rental car if it's available, to a flight if it's available, ask at hotel checkout, check in what's available. So I think we just, you know, we need to open our mouths through that mask when we can travel again.
Absolutely, and consumer demand drives business decisions. I was on a panel with a representative from Skyscanner a while ago, and they have a greener choices label where you can see which flight has the lowest carbon footprint on the planet. And they know exactly how much data is behind. They have so much data, and they're looking at that, and they're looking to see if that little green leaf next to one of their flight options, if that's driving and shifting consumer decisions. And so it's huge, especially if you're familiar with sustainable tourism. Seek out those experiences and really be vocal about requesting them and needing them. We have a ton of questions that are coming through. I'm going to do my best to get through a handful of them. I know we're just about at time, and I also know that Natalie is in Australia, so her business day is starting soon. But if everyone's good to go a couple of minutes over, perfect. Thank you. So Hannah said, my university thesis looked into tourist greenwashing themselves. Many of my research subjects would post photos on social media, talk about their experiences and how amazing it was, but rarely talk about how it influenced them to become more sustainable upon return home from their ecotourism experience. Do you feel that this is an area of growth within the tourism sector, and how the sustainable customer experience can continue at home? And do you have any views on how this could happen and encourage ongoing sustainability?
Well, I think the short answer is there is a huge movement for transformational travel. And that's what travel does. It gives you an opportunity to get out of your zone of where you're at, experience a new way of doing things, and then bring it back with you. And it is through your individual actions that can make a change. So whether you didn't eat vegetarian before and you went someplace and you ate all vegetarian and said, you know what, I can do this, and go home and do it, that's great. That makes a huge impact. So yes, definitely. And to broadcast it out and tell people about your experiences, blog about it, tell about it, share about it, because, you know, that's the single best way to get people to go to these types of places is word of mouth from you.
I'm going to try to rapid fire through as many as possible. Justin asked, Randy, why, in your opinion, does mainstream travel media continue to put out the message, quote, see it while you can, when, which would seem to contrast with sustainable and responsible tourism initiatives?
Mainstream media writes articles that they think people will read. That's why they write that. And, you know, even mainstream, and even when you look at mainstream travel magazines and the newspaper section, they talk out of both sides of their mouth in parallel articles. You know, they'll talk about what's hot this summer, what's a hot destination. And then the next article will be about go off the beaten path. Well, what is it? You know, you can't look at mainstream media as a source for sustainability. They're just going to write a hodgepodge of things to just try to get eyeballs on them.
Even thinking about mainstream media and top 10 lists, if everyone's flocking to the same top 10 spots in a destination, that results in over-tourism very quickly. Nanya Reed asked, a lot of travel accommodations are made through Airbnb types of accommodations. Do any of you know how that section is being integrated in the sustainability conversation?
Well, actually, Airbnb is a GSPC member, and we've been talking to them for years about. They've done a lot on the home sharing side. I mean, they've got extremely strong rules on discriminatory practices. They had a couple of ugly situations, but they already had discriminatory practices before. But then they really added to them when there were a couple of ugly situations, and then they just immediately ban a host who is racist or discriminatory in any way. We recently completed a project with them on the experiences side of providing guidance to the host and to the traveler on sustainability. So, but on the home sharing core business side, they haven't gone in the holistic way that we've been wanting them to, and they've been talking to us about, but they've done a lot of nice pieces to it, and I believe that they intend to go more holistically.
And the agency asked, what are some easy to spot signs of greenwashing when it comes to booking travel accommodations?
You know, I think you can just see it on their website. You know, there's the drink by the pool, and it's just got a rubber, I mean, it's got a plastic straw in it. There are things like that that you can just see that they just miss the details. And if you see something that makes you cringe, it ain't right.
Yeah, I would add, I think you can see that in a lot of travel experiences. You know, what's the imagery they're showing? And if that's not aligning with that kind of respect and the processes that they have in place, then yeah, that could be an indication.
And for the last question, Carolina asked, what are the potential OTAs, which is online travel agencies, in promoting destinations and organizations that have gone through an accredited and transparent certification process?
I'll pick up on that. We at GSPC have been talking to OTAs, the largest ones in the world, for years, and that discussion is mostly focused on hotels. And as I said earlier, we got some movement now where two very large ones are testing in various markets, hotel search results. We try to introduce the idea of destinations. They really struggle with that. The major OTAs don't do a lot with destinations. They're selling products for a commission. And they have some guidance on destinations, but it's not real rich, and it's not, you know, their core interest, because their core interest is to make money. But one website that I really like a lot, if our participants are not aware of it yet, I'm typing it now, bookdifferent.com. They're using an algorithm of a carbon footprint on hotels, and then you can click on certified too. And so they track certification bodies that we at GSPC are working with. So you can actually filter hotel searches on bookdifferent.com to find certified hotels. But in addition to hotels, they've got a nice piece on destinations. So please have a look at that. They're the best OTA I've seen. They're not a famous one. They don't have the market reach as the famous ones, but that's the best OTA destination display on sustainability that we're aware of. Oh, Emily has something.
I know that there's still some questions that are rolling in, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Again, if this is your first Impact Travel Alliance event, we also have a Facebook group. I'll go ahead and I'll put that link into the chat. What I really love about these conversations is that we can continue them in the Facebook group afterwards. So if you have more questions, I'll start a new thread. Definitely keep asking them in there, and we can continue the conversation. I want to give a really big thank you to all of our panelists. I know that we asked some tough questions today. This is, like I said at the beginning, a complex topic that has a lot to unpack within each of these little questions that we are talking about through all of this. And it's a lot to do in just an hour. So I really appreciate you sharing your insight and expertise, for being honest about where you're coming from and what the industry needs to do to continue to improve, and how travelers can act as advocates to really drive change within the industry. Thank you all so much for coming, and I will see you at the next event.
Thank you very much, Kelly.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity.